Hello everyone, welcome to a profound exploration of the timeless literary work War is Kind, penned by the illustrious Stephen Crane. Today, we embark on a journey into the depths of this poetic masterpiece, unraveling its layers of meaning and contemplating the profound implications it carries. First and foremost, let's have a look at the introduction. The poem was published in 1905, 6 years after Crane's death, and is composed of 4 stanzas of varying lengths. The poem explores the theme of childhood innocence and its loss in the face of war and violence. The speaker addresses a young boy who is fascinated by the glory and heroism of war and tries to disillusion him by showing him the harsh realities and horrors of war. The poem uses irony, imagery, and repetition to contrast the boy's naive and romantic view of war with the speaker's cynical and realistic view of war. The poem also questions the morality and purpose of war, and its impact on individuals and society. The poem can be seen as a critique of the culture of war and militarism that prevailed in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and as a reflection of Crane's own experiences as a war correspondent and witness of several wars. Then, we are going to discuss the poem line by line. First, go to the first stanza. The speaker addresses a maiden, or a young woman, whose lover has died in war. He tells her not to cry, because war is kind, which is an obvious contradiction and an example of verbal irony. He describes how her lover threw his hands in the air, implying that he was shot or wounded, and how his horse ran away in fear. The use of the word affrighted suggests the horror and panic of war. The speaker repeats the refrain, "Do not weep." War is kind, at the end of the stanza, creating a contrast between the reality of war and the false consolation he offers. Let's have a look on the next stanza. The speaker shifts the focus from the maiden to the soldiers who are marching to war. He uses the imagery of hoarse, booming drums to create a sense of noise and chaos, and calls the soldiers little souls who thirst for fight, implying that they are naive and eager for violence. He states that these men were born to drill and die, suggesting that they have no other purpose or value in life. He then mocks the idea of glory in war, calling it unexplained and flying above the corpses of the soldiers. He invokes the battle god, a personification of war, and says that his kingdom is a field where 1,000 corpses lie, implying that war is cruel and merciless. We're moving to the third stanza. The speaker addresses a babe, or a child, whose father has died in war. He tells the child not to cry, because war is kind, repeating the ironic refrain. He describes how the father tumbled in the yellow trenches, which are the ditches dug for protection in warfare, and how he raged, gulped, and died, using onomatopoeia to create a vivid and gruesome picture of his death. He repeats the refrain, "Do not weep." War is kind, at the end of the stanza, creating a contrast between the reality of war and the false consolation he offers. In the next stanza, the speaker shifts the focus from the child to the flag of the regiment, which is a symbol of patriotism and pride. He uses the imagery of swift, blazing flag and eagle with crest of red and gold to create a sense of majesty and power. He repeats the line, "These men were born to drill and die," emphasizing the futility and waste of human lives in war. He then uses sarcasm to point out the absurdity of war, telling the flag to point out the virtue of slaughter and the excellence of killing, which are clearly immoral and evil. He ends the stanza with the same line as the previous one, "And a field where 1,000 corpses lie," creating a contrast between the glory of the flag and the horror of the battlefield. In the last stanza, the speaker addresses a mother whose son has died in war. He tells her not to cry, because war is kind, repeating the ironic refrain. He uses a simile to compare her heart to a button that hangs humbly on the bright splendid shroud of her son, creating a contrast between her grief and the pompous display of his death. He repeats the refrain, "Do not weep." War is kind, at the end of the poem, creating a contrast between the reality of war and the false consolation he offers. In the annals of literary history, few works have encapsulated the stark realities of war with such poignant brevity as War is Kind. Stephen Crane, a luminary of American naturalism, crafted a poetic narrative that transcends its brevity, leaving an indelible mark on the canvas of war literature. Crane, a keen observer of human nature, thrusts us into the heart of paradoxical human emotions in times of conflict. The title, War is Kind, acts as a provocative paradox, a thematic key that unlocks the dichotomy between the ostensible kindness of war and the harsh, unrelenting brutality it inflicts upon humanity. The structural nuances of Crane's work must not be overlooked. The poem is not a mere collection of verses, it is a carefully orchestrated symphony of language, where the rhythm and cadence mirror the tumultuous heartbeat of war itself. The brevity of each stanza, coupled with its profound impact, reinforces the brutal efficiency with which war operates. Crane employs irony as a weapon to dissect the romanticized notions surrounding war. "Do not weep, maiden, for war is kind," he declares, mocking the conventional idealization of heroism and glory. Through this ironic lens, Crane compels readers to confront the harsh realities obscured by the veil of societal glorification. One cannot escape the pathos that permeates Crane's verses. The agony of innocent lives caught in the crossfire becomes a poignant leitmotif, a haunting reminder that war's indiscriminate brutality knows no bounds. From the bereaved mothers to the orphaned children, Crane underscores the tragic toll exacted by the juggernaut of conflict. War is Kind by Stephen Crane is a powerful and ironic exploration of the harsh realities of war. Through vivid imagery, a recurring refrain, and a detached tone, the poem challenges conventional notions of war, presenting it as a destructive force that brings suffering and sorrow rather than kindness. Furthermore, the poem's structure, consisting of short stanzas and a consistent refrain, adds to its impact. The repetition of the refrain serves to drive home the central irony and underscores the poem's thematic consistency. In summary, War is Kind by Stephen Crane is a powerful and ironic exploration of the harsh realities of war. Through vivid imagery, a recurring refrain, and a detached tone, the poem challenges conventional notions of war, presenting it as a destructive force that brings suffering and death. The phrase "war is kind" becomes a bitter and sardonic commentary on the human tendency to romanticize or glorify war despite its grim reality. The poem opens with the recurring line, "Do not weep, maiden, for war is kind," setting the tone for the ironic and detached perspective the poem takes on war. Throughout the poem, Crane presents various scenes of war, each followed by the refrain that war is kind. The juxtaposition of the brutal, tragic images of war with the repeated assertion that war is kind creates a powerful irony. We have come to the end of the video. If you find it helpful, don't forget to give a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more content like this.